Well, it's good to be back from holidays. And today we're talking about what is love. And, all joking aside, I think that's a really important question. I've had 3 weeks off and, directly to work on my boat. I've got an old boat that I've wanted to restore for years, and I'm using the pandemic as an excuse to do that. And really, I wanted to get all the heavy lifting done before the bugs came out and before it was too hot to wear layers, because you don't want to sand fiberglass in short sleeves. That is a bad idea. So that's what I've been doing. I've been basically doing all the heavy lifting for the last 3 weeks so that I can do the finesse work in the evenings going forward. And so I've had a lot of time to just shut my brain off. I'm doing all the brainless work. And that's been a real gift, highly recommended. But it's been really interesting as I've been taking all the layers off, what remains. And the thought that's just remained, that my head's been turning over for a couple of weeks now, is just this concept of love. And the reason for that is that I think love, the way we love, informs everything else we do. It really is, it informs our politics, it informs our ethics, it informs the way we relate to each other and the way we interact and the way we structure our lives. How we love is incredibly important. It's very telling about who we are. But I think the question, not in my experience, the question too often is about whether we love. But everybody thinks they love. Like even clan members are going to think that they're being loving somehow. They just don't love anyway. I don't want to go down that road, but everybody justifies it to themselves somehow. The real question is how. And often I have people say to me things like, "Oh, Steve, you just got to love. You just got to be loving." But even thinking about our little group here in the congregation in Tweed, or our larger community, or just the people in my life, thinking about sort of everybody I know, there could be a pretty big debate on the details. And even thinking about other Christians that I don't know, or, sometimes I look and go, are you reading the same book as I am? And just because we disagree doesn't mean that other people's opinions and viewpoints aren't valid. There's debate on this topic, and I think we need to be honest about that. And where we stand is going to say a lot and mean a lot. So I thought about sort of 4 different ways to think about love that I wanted to talk about today. And the first is, how do you react to letting loved ones make their own mistakes, even if it's a really big mistake? And we've dealt with things like drugs or pregnancy, or abuse, things like that. I know that we've dealt with some really serious things in our families. And how do we feel about the fact that we don't have control over other people? Do we try and seize control? And is that right or wrong? I think about tough love and the times that I've sort of made tough love decisions and actions in my life. I think every time I've regretted it. And as I think back about whether I would do things differently, I sort of go, I don't think I could. Sometimes it requires a heavy hand. But I think the way I would have liked to have gone about it, the way I hope I go about it in the future, is from a vulnerability on my side. I think when we're talking about tough love and letting people in our lives make mistakes, often it's about us being strong. But when we've gotten to a point of tough love, I think that's really saying, I don't know what to do in this situation. Maybe I do know what's best. Maybe I have, way better life skills than the person I'm dealing with that I love. And I'd like them to have good life skills. But maybe I am at the ceiling of what I can do as a person to lead them. And if you force your way, is that putting pressure on someone that's already got more pressure than they can handle? Would I or you or whoever get further by saying, listen, I'm really concerned for this reason. I'm out of things to do. It's a thought. The second way I want to think about it is do you ever think about who you love first? I think that's a really uncomfortable question, and a lot of people are probably saying no. But at the end of the day, we probably do. Are we going to help our child first or a kid at the school we don't know? These are the decisions that humans have to make. It just goes with going about our lives. And I don't think we should underestimate the toxicity of that issue. We really should be loving everybody equally, whether they're our own kids, whether they're someone on the other side of the world. That's really hard. It's really hard. I got to say, while I was on holidays, I was watching a show, set in the 1920s, and it was sort of a subplot was the creep in of fascism. And so I thought, I've never actually really looked into fascism. It's at least worth reading the Wikipedia article, getting a baseline. And I've sort of bristled, that word fascism has been thrown about an awful lot lately, just with the polarization and everything that's going on in the world. And I found it distasteful. I really, when someone says fascist, I shut my brain off. But as I got looking into this for this other reason, I thought, this is alarmingly insidious and a really short jump from where we are. The way I understand it is it's saying, we've got to get our own house in order at any cost. Things are so broken that we've got to fix it at any cost. And, you can think about Germany in the post-war, interwar period, and that makes a lot of sense. Like, they're burning money to keep warm. That was where they were at. Things were broken. And, especially during the Depression and things like that, things were really broken. And people were saying, all right, we've got to get our own house in order. So that's sort of the first step. The second step becomes, when that doesn't work, the second step becomes, okay, who lives in this house? Who counts as belonging to our nation? And you start excluding people that you think are the problem. One of the phrases that's been thrown around are old stock Canadians. Who's Canadian? That is a conversation that is alive and well right now. So that's sort of the second step. And the third step is, let's find someone who knows the solution, and we'll put them in charge and we'll let them fix things. A dictator. And I think that conversation's alive and well right now as well. So who do you love first? The third way I want to think about this is how do we support the people we love? As a person with a disability, I have seen a lot of friends get loved into oblivion. I've seen people who are fully capable of taking care of themselves, just be taken care of by other people to the point where they're a pet. It's really, really troubling. I've also seen seniors lose their sense of purpose. People that are not traditionally able, they just don't feel like they're giving back. They don't feel like they have a role or value in society. And they just, it's probably one of the most tragic things I've seen. And, everything in my line of work, whether it be, legitimate anthropological research or theology, says everybody has value. But when we just serve, are we allowing them to have value? Is that about us feeling better for helping? Or is that about us enabling them to find value? The last thing is, can we link our everyday actions with even surprisingly distant people? Can we recognize that we're in a really surprisingly interconnected web? And the way the example I was thinking about today was I've been recently incredibly disappointed to find out. Frankly, I feel like I've been lied to by institutions I trust. But the little triangles on the back of plastic that indicate they're recyclable, apparently that's a very successful PR campaign by the recycling companies in the 70s and 80s, or not by the plastic companies in the 70s and 80s. Just because it has that triangle on the back doesn't mean that it's recyclable. But the plastic companies have put research, and this is documented, have put money behind convincing us, to the point where they've been invited into schools and things like that to teach recycling. They have taught us that we can go buy that plastic thing and put it in the recycle bin, and as long as it goes in the recycle bin, we're fine. But we're finding out now that a lot of what we put in the recycle bin is actually going to the dump. That's, when we were buying those, I don't know, bottles of water or packages of Sunny Delight or whatever, I don't know. I'm trying to think of 90s things. But when we were buying those plastic things, were we thinking about the impact, or were we just thinking, hey, this is convenient, and this little triangle says that it's okay? We don't realize how connected we are, and we don't always think to ask questions. So the question, as I've sort of gone through all this, is, have I set an impossibly high standard? And the answer is really simple. Yes. This is a standard that none of us can live up to. And I think that's not the end of the story. The end of the story is that love defeats this impossibly high standard. And let me tell you why. As we're talking about what love is, I thought about it, and I thought I see three things. One is that love is dynamic. History marches on. People constantly change. We're constantly learning. Everything is dynamic. The only constant in life is change, which means love needs to be dynamic. It can't, and I know people that have done this, that have said, I'm tired of learning. I'm tired of being flexible. This is where I'm stopping, and everybody else will conform to this. That's not love anymore. Simple. Love needs to be dynamic. And it needs to be dynamic because love needs to be understanding. You can hurt me, and I'll still be hurt. But if you and I can have a relationship and truly love each other, and I can understand why you did the thing that you did, and that you are sorry, then we can build a relationship off of that. We can continue together, even though, you've hurt me or I've hurt you. Love needs understanding. And I think as a Christian, that's why I take so much comfort in the fact that the mystery we call God understands every fiber of our being. That's how grace works, understanding, in my world anyway. And finally, love, I think, is vulnerable. We all probably have someone in our lives who loves but doesn't listen. It's a one-directional love. And that's really overbearing. It's easy to recognize that you're loved, but it can be a really hard thing to live with. And so love requires us saying, you know what, I'm not in charge. We're doing this together. I don't always know the right thing. I'm listening. I'm open. It requires us to be vulnerable. If we can't be vulnerable with each other, or if we can't be vulnerable with other people, can we really love other people? And I think the how is actually stated simply, but the concept is really hard, and that's that it's a constant journey. We are pilgrims on a road, and I think it's a road that can't be walked alone. We need to be in a community, and this is what the church is for. There's other places you can do this, but the church is specifically for this. Is this group of pilgrims that is constantly trying to figure this out, constantly doing the work to be loving, because we're not going to match that standard. We're not, there's going to be blind spots. There's going to be misunderstandings. Things are going to keep evolving. And the church is about sort of all of us coming together and working this out as a group, because it's really hard impossible to do on your own. It's a journey, it's work. And as we think about sort of the biblical basis for this, if it's not already obvious, this whole passage today, it's talking about how important love is, but really what Jesus is saying is, God taught me how to love, I've taught you how to love, and the solution is for you to follow in my footsteps. Jesus was a person that was constantly railing against rigidity. Love wasn't checkboxes for him. Nothing was checkboxes for him. Jesus did not live in a black and white world. He lived in a gray world, which is the real world. And he wanted us to know that and recognize that. He was a person that could eat and spend time with anybody. One night he'd be with Pharisees and political leaders. The next night he'd be with prostitutes and tax collectors. He could read a room. He could appreciate a person. He could love anybody. He was a person that was compassionate. When we talk about the healing stuff, I've always thought, the healing's sort of not consistent with Jesus' mission, to be honest. He didn't come here to heal us. He came here to teach so that we could change, so that we'd stop hurting. But when he saw someone that was sick, he couldn't help himself. Those healing narratives, whether you believe them or not, the point is compassion. The point is that he was walking, he didn't heal everybody in the world. He healed the people that he came across on the road. And I think that's just simply compassion motivation. There's a person that's hurting, I'm going to heal you. And he's a person that built his movement on marginalized people. Yeah, there was a couple of rich people and powerful people hanging around, Nicodemus, Joseph of Arimathea, but the movement was built on everyday people, marginalized people, people that were not traditionally valued. This is the kind of love that we're supposed to be emulating. And imagine if we could build a world based on that.